This episode of the What's Happening Delco podcast is brought to you by Delco Meets for Business. Check us out on Meetup, register, and attend one of our fantastic networking meetings, which we meet on the first and third Thursday at the Brick House in Ridley Park, and the second and fourth Thursday at the Upper Crust in Newtown Square. We look forward to seeing you there. What's happening, Delco? I'm Rich Shane, and welcome to the What's Happening Delco podcast. Today, I'm joined by Chris Pierdomenico of Delco the Movie. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Rich, thanks so much for having me, man. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to talk to you. You're only my second interview about Delco the Movie, so I'm honored. I'm honored that you were interested enough to bring me on to get content. This is worthwhile content.
Well, I mean, Delco, the podcast, Delco, the movie, I mean, what's happening, Delco, it all seems to fit to me. So yes. Anything that's going on in Delco, I feel like this is one of the few times, in a way, we have some sort of newsworthy scoop that is just gaining traction and people are just finding out about it. What is Delco, the movie?
Sure. So Delco the Movie is a feature-length film that I have written, I'm going to direct, and I'm producing currently, that we're looking to film in August. Essentially is a narrative film. So people have asked, is it a documentary? No, it's not a documentary. It's a narrative film, a comedy drama, teen high school movie, very, very loosely based on my own experiences in high school about 20 years ago. So it's very much in the vein of a Kevin Smith movie or a John Hughes movie, where it's this kind of coming of age thing, but very, very much set in Delco in the early 2000s. So we are hopefully, we're in the middle of a crowdfunding campaign, but hopefully we're going to start filming next month. And then we're going to release it to Delco. We're going to do a big red carpet premiere in Delco. We're still looking at a couple locations. And then after that, release it on streaming.
Tell me about this crowdfunding campaign, because I am sure that as people are hearing about this, knowing that there's a movie in our backyard and being able to say, I invested, I'm some sort of a backer of this movie. How do people get an opportunity to help you make your movie?
Sure. Well, they can go to delcothemovie.com. So that links to a site called Seed and Spark. So, some people have heard of like Kickstarter or Indiegogo. This is a very, very similar to that, where they can pledge, any amount they want. And we have incentives for that. So it could be anything from, getting, depending on how much they pledge, they could get, signed posters from the cast. They could, have their business in the movie in some way. Everybody gets a shout out. And then you can even, up to a certain amount, you can become a producer of the movie. So have your name as like producer of Delco the Movie, which is very, very cool. You can also be in the movie, which is very exciting. So I mentioned that, this movie is very much inspired by like John Hughes movies and Kevin Smith movies. So Kevin Smith's first film, Clerks, was what mainly inspired me to be a filmmaker. And so the star of Clerks, the actor, Brian O'Halloran, is actually going to be in the movie.
So cool.
Really exciting. And one of our incentives is that you can actually be in the scene with him. He's in a big crowd scene, and you can actually appear on camera with him, which is really, really cool. Kind of, I think as a young filmmaker 20 years ago, it would just blow my mind if I had the chance to do that.
Well, you mentioned Brian O'Halloran, and he's going to be one of the principal actors featured in the movie. Can you say, or any other actors that you've lined up for the movie?
Absolutely. So we have some of the other noteworthy actors is we have Brian Anthony Wilson is going to be in the movie. So he's sort of, he's well known in the area. We also have Brian Dunkelman. So those are some of the more noteworthy people. The main cast is mainly the teenagers, the actors playing the teenagers. And so they are going to be played by Jeff Pfeiffer, Steve Harding, and Jenna Kersey, who, are all rising stars, in the area, in our local area, which is very, very cool.
We lost a little bit of streaming audio, during you explaining Brian Dunkelman. So give a little bit of quick synopsis of Brian Dunkelman as you were talking about it.
Absolutely, yeah. So Brian Dunkelman plays a prominent role in the movie as well. So we have the three Brians, in the movie. Brian Dunkelman plays one of the father figures and plays a really, really funny role and an emotional role too. People that don't know, he was the co-host of American Idol with Ryan Seacrest 20 years ago for season 1. And so we have him in. So a whole bunch of early 2000s nostalgia we have packed in here. So there's not only going to be just a ton of Delco Easter eggs, but also early 2000s. If any of your listeners were, into that time period, we really wanted to make it a tribute to not just, the area, but also the time period.
As you sat down to write this, what was it like for you to watch and think as your story was opening up on a screenplay? What was, and you're thinking about characters and you're thinking about people to play roles. I'm sure, as you said, you were referencing some of you growing up and your Delco experiences, but take us through a little bit of that process of writing the screenplay.
Sure. Well, it's kind of funny. I did a version of this movie when I was in high school 20 years ago. I took a video class and I stayed after school and I made a movie. So, this Delco the movie is a remake really of my high school film. So I already had these characters in mind for the last 20 years. And I kind of have been looking for the right time to kind of do it the right way, actually with a budget, in a professional setting, kind of do it the right way. I've had, in that time, I've directed and written a number of short films and, I've done various productions and podcasts and that kind of thing. So I started writing this version of the script 2 summers ago. So summer 2021, where I said, I've been sitting on it for 20 years, the idea and the concept. I'm like, I'm just going to write it. I got to write it. And I just said, I'm a high school teacher by trade, so I have summers off. I'm like, all right, I'm going to stay up every night and I'm going to write at least 5 to 10 pages. And I'm not going to go to bed until I finish writing those 5 to 10 pages, no matter how bad those pages are. I'm just going to write it out. And so that's what I did. And, I would miss a day here and there, but by the end of the summer, I had a 90-page screenplay that was a rough draft. And, that's the hardest thing to do. It's a tendency for many writers, not even just screenwriters, but, to edit as you go along. And so you write 5 pages and the writer thinks like, oh, I got to change all this, change all that. So you never get to an end rough draft. So that was my method. It seemed to have worked. We're on draft 6 by now. But getting that first rough draft out was very key. I had an idea of where we started and where we were going to wind up when I started writing it, but it was kind of the getting there that I had to figure out. That was the fun part.
You're in your own moment. It's those quiet moments, just you by yourself, or maybe with a really close friend, and you're dreaming and you're getting excited about the possibilities of where this movie could end up. So share with our listeners, that over the top, hey, if this happened to this movie, that would be way beyond even any expectation that you could have appreciated.
Gosh, I think the goal really would be for somebody like Netflix or Hulu to pick it up. I guess I would feel like I had made it by then. Like, okay,
All right, I keep looking over your shoulder and you've got your Back to the Future wall. And you talked about how John Hughes and you've had these influences in your life. But the Back to the Future for you, Marty McFly, who doesn't go around between, Doc and Marty and, every once in a while you're throwing out some sort of quote from Back to the Future. So, but what was it as an influence for you as why that's made it to this huge wall over your shoulder?
Sure. It's, if you really want to go back,
we'll go back to the future.
We'll go back to the future. Yeah. If you really want to go back to the past, my mother saw Back to the Future in theater when she was pregnant with me. So it's kind of, it all kind of ties together. It just was always one of my favorite movies growing up. And I got to, through the through the internet, which is amazing. Like I've been able to befriend people involved in the movie, like JJ Cohen, like this guy right here who plays Skinhead, has become a very good friend of mine. And here's, a message he wrote me, and I have this hanging, on my wall. So like, he's a good friend. I talked to him casually, which is really, really cool. A couple summers ago, actually, I think probably the same summer I wrote the movie, I got a chance to meet Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd.
Oh, that is so cool. Look at Christopher Lloyd, man. He's like, he looks like he just came out of an episode of Moonshiners or something.
Yeah, I think he was doing some other movie where he had to, around that time, he had to have a beard, but he's done other conventions where he kind of looks closer to the doc we know. But that's one of those once in a lifetime opportunities I had to take. So, I've always to me, Back to the Future is the perfect movie. And it kind of starts from a story standpoint. Everything that's referenced in the beginning of the movie is eventually paid off. Like there are no loose ends, in that movie. And it's just such a great character study. It's such a great story. It's so simplistic, but brilliant at the same time. That's kind of, they always say like, what movie would you bring with you to a, deserted island or something? And that would definitely be it. Cause it's like, I never get tired of watching it. So it, even though I'm not doing, I don't really have the wherewithal to do a sci-fi movie right now. And I don't know if it's really my thing. I'm kind of more like comedy drama. Back to the Future is like that movie that got me excited about watching movies.
At some point, maybe we're quoting all the scenes or some of the main characters from Delco, the movie, and they become, just part of this nationwide, little snippets where people are at, let's say their convenience store, because sadly not everybody gets to enjoy what we have here, but maybe they'll throw something at the clerk or your high school, something that comes out of it. Can you give a little bit like a preview of, let's say, some scenes or some ideas or maybe some places you're looking to film in Delco?
Sure. So, a good bit of it takes place at, a high school. We weren't able to use my actual, I'm a Sun Valley High School graduate, as I grew up in Aston and everything. So it's very much based on Aston. We weren't able to film there, but in our minds, the place where we're filming is Sun Valley, for the purposes of the story. So we'll be there for a couple of days at that location, not actually at Sun Valley. We'll be filming at Tom Jones in Brookhaven. So that was also a very, very big part of my childhood, is going to Tom Jones. And especially like after the prom, or just, when you need to have like a 3 a.m. talk with your best friend, that's where we went. So there'll be a scene that takes place there. They were very welcoming, to the idea of doing like a Delco movie and having them be a part of it. We'll also be at media theaters. So we really want to hit, as many hot spots as we can. Even if we don't like spend a lot of time there in the movie, we want to reference it. We want everyone to be able to watch the movie like, oh, I know that spot. I know that spot.
Here's a word, as I'm listening to you, Chris, talk about, and your face gets all, you like light up, you beam as you talk about the movie. This is one of those, if you go back and talk to yourself 20 years ago, and you could give yourself advice, I'm thinking this is advice you give to those of the generation today who are in high school. Don't put everything on social media. Save it. And 20 years from now, you can make a movie about it. And not everybody knows. And now it's fresh and new and it's really cool. If you could go back to that, high school self of Chris and say, Chris, one, little word of advice, or, hey, this is what your life is going to be, what would you tell him if you went back to the future?
If I went back to the future, I would say writing is everything. Writing is everything. And, it's funny because like when I've done like these interviews, I've done these podcasts, and I mentioned that like, oh, I did a version of this when I was a high school filmmaker. Like, oh, is there anywhere we can see it? I'm like, oh no, I'm not putting that out there. Like, I'm really proud of what I did back then, but I don't love the dialogue. I just think, it's a first draft, right? It's a first draft. I never did any more drafts on it. So I think just I think a lot of young filmmakers, and whether they're in high school or, even if they're older, I mean, we have a lot of folks making their first independent movies in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. I think a lot of folks kind of get really excited at like, oh, I'm gonna make a movie. I'm really, I have all this great equipment. I've hired all these great people. But if it's not there in the script that really, crushes the rest of it, in my opinion, I think that you have to have a really, really solid script. I think you have to do table reads. You have to be able to hear your script out loud and make changes to it kind of based on that. Something that makes sense in our head by ourselves as we're writing it, may not play well when it's said out loud by an actor. So I say it all comes back to writing. I wish I had spent more time on writing back then. Hey, everything worked out. And I can still enjoy my original film as long as I have it on mute, so I don't have to hear my own dialogue.
To your point, I think Leonardo da Vinci destroyed all his doodles when he was a kid. So, or he knew where they were. He was just not showing anybody. He wanted people to see how he developed and grew. So I can appreciate hey, this was the inspiration at one time. These were the ideas, but you can keep that in the vault and bring it out when you do family reunions or friend reunions and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So again, where can people find, if they want to crowdfund, if they want to learn more about the movie, where can they find out information?
Sure. DelcoTheMovie.com has everything. So it has a very short 2-minute explanation video where I kind of talk about where I got my ideas and kind of my inspiration, stuff about my family and friends growing up. And you can check out there where, depending on how much you'd like to pledge, you get different rewards for that. Another thing you can do is just follow us on that page. There's a button that says follow. You can log in with like a Facebook account or a Google account. And the more followers we get, I think we're now up to 182 followers. 182. If we get to 250, Seed and Spark, the website, will give us perks for that. Like they'll give us like vouchers for like film festival entries and stuff like that. So it's a free way to support the movie. Like even if you can't pledge anything, if you follow us, that helps us a lot. That really, really helps us a lot. So, if you want to see this movie happen, everybody, as much as I do, or even just a little bit less, check out DelcoTheMovie.com. We would love to have you be part of Team Delco.
That's awesome. I love it. You're working on the script and you get a craving for a cheesesteak. Where are you going?
Los Pedos, really.
You've got the cast around doing that table read and you want to make sure they get some really good pizza. Where are you going for Delco pizza?
Oh gosh, probably Coco's, because, if I need to foil any criminals, that kind of comes with it.
All right, you're picking up one of these, cast members from the airport, and you want to make sure if they have a convenience store option and they need a little quick stop, are you taking them to Royal Farms or are you taking them to Wawa?
Oh, Wawa. Wawa by far.
Is there something that stands out at Wawa that's your go-to?
So it's funny. My wife and I go to Wawa. She takes a little while to order. I always know exactly what I want. I get the shorty buffalo chicken cheesesteak every time.
Very, very cool. If you have people coming in from out of town, as you may right now, and you maybe have a day off from filming and you want to give them that Delco experience, where are you sending them or where are you taking them?
That's a great, there's so much to see.
After you take them to the premiere or the screening of your movie, of course.
Movie. After that, we go to Tom Jones. Actually, we have an incentive on DelcoTheMovie.com where we will take you out. We will take you and several friends out to Tom Jones, and we'll pay for it, and we'll have a great time. So I say Tom Jones. That's where I used to bring friends out of town, potential new girlfriends, that kind of thing. That was like the go-to spot. So I think you got to hit Tom Jones.
I'm hesitant to ask this question. We asked this of all the guests on the podcast. I'm hesitant to ask because I want to see it unfold in the movie a little bit, but yeah. I'm going to delve into your mind and where your mindset is at. But how do you describe Delco to somebody that's not from here?
That's a great question. I think I have had to do this before. I would say it is, how do you describe Delco, famous for its infamy.
I'm just leaving it at that. That's like there's so much to explore, and you're probably stopping the podcast right now, and you restarted it to hear me say this, but famous for its infamy. You really have to work through that. So thank you for that little nugget. I appreciate that.
You know, I think I when I'm explaining the movie to people, like what's Delco the movie about, and I said it's kind of about having a complicated relationship with where you're from, having a love-hate relationship with where you're from. And I think that's sort of, I mean, I think a lot of people even beyond Delco can relate to that. And, you know, in my marriage vows, I had to promise my wife that I wouldn't make her die in Delco.
Wait, is it actually the physical activity of dying in Delco? Can she be brought back to Delco for the funeral? Are there specific rules? And I don't mean to get morbid on the podcast, but
it's Delco. We get morbid, man.
Okay.
Yeah. No, well, just that we weren't going to live there for the rest of our lives.
Okay.
So that was actually in our vows. Got a nice laugh at the wedding. But you know, there's a roughness to Delco, but there's also a warmth of familiarity. That's what I would say.
Is that still a vow you're adhering to?
Yes. I actually don't live in. I'm sorry. I gotta pull the veil down. I actually don't live in Delco currently, but I'm there quite a bit.
You know, there are plenty of places. Widmer's Tobacco Shop. He literally, I mean, he's Delco. 3 generations of Delco. They've been a guest on the podcast, and he lives in Delaware, but he has his store in Delco. So as long as you're spending some time here, you're telling our story, and you went to high school here, you went to school here, you have those Delco roots. When you think about, you know, what gets you out of bed every day, Chris? I mean, what motivates you?
Oh gosh. I mean, I have a really great job. You know, during the school year, I teach television and video production to high schoolers, and I essentially work with kids that were exactly the same as me when I was in high school. And so I think what gets me out of bed every day is just, you know, getting a chance to work with young people and just to talk about film all day, which is just really, really radically cool. You know, I'm very blessed to, you know, be able to have a job I love and, you know, really kind of work in film full time in a sense. It's like, yeah, I'm a high school teacher, but I'm working, you know, it's specifically in film. So yeah, I always get to do something fun or new every day.
Is there anything we haven't touched upon, anything about Delco the movie or you that you want people to know about?
Sure. Well, I want to give a brief synopsis of the movie in case you're interested.
See, I didn't know if you wanted to let all this out of the bag yet. I think, you know, build it up.
I'll let a little bit. It's, you know, I won't tell too much, but I'll just say the movie, it takes place on one day. So it's kind of like, you know, if you think back to like Ferris Bueller or Clerks, you know, it takes place on one day. It's kind of similar to Superbad, where it is a Delco high schooler who his dad's a pastor. He's expected he's going to go to like pastor school. By the way, this does not relate to me because that was not me, but he wants to live one night as a normal kid in Delco. And so he has a friend named Jess who's going to kind of show him how to break rules for the first time in Delco, how to live the Delco experience. And that's basically the movie is how do good kids get in trouble in Delco?
I'm thinking just blowing through a lot of red lights as far as I'm concerned.
We don't make it too close to life, right?
Chris, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for being a friend of What's Happening Delco. We can't wait to see this movie made. Again, the website to go to donate to make sure this film gets made.
DelcoTheMovie.com.
DelcoTheMovie.com. Thank you so much. And we can't wait to see you at the premiere.
All right. Thanks so much, Rich. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Chris.